I'm making this video today because one of you requested a video about my experience with Michael Singer's work and letting go. I want to give you a candid, raw account of what that's been like over the last 10 years. So this video is really my personal journey through this process of letting go. If at any point you find that this information is helpful, then please like, subscribe, share with other people that you think might also benefit from hearing this message. And lastly, I'm passionate about helping people, so if you feel like you'd like to work with me, please feel free to reach out to me at the email in the description box below. What are they talking about? Most people come to this path of letting go when they've tried everything else, and all of the other things that they've tried haven't worked. So people sort of approach letting go with this attitude of, well, I don't have anything else to lose. I might as well try this. At the end of the day, we all need to let go of our resistance to what is. What it is that we're resisting is the source of our suffering. Now, when I first started on this path with Michael Singer, I remember reading The Untethered Soul, and it definitely resonated with me. But looking back, and realizing what I know now, I realized that then I wasn't really understanding what he was talking about because I hadn't had my first experience of what it is that I actually am. I was approaching letting go from the standpoint of holding on to my personal self. And when you're seeing through that lens, then it's very difficult to get to the root of what Michael Singer is talking about, which is really letting go of this personal self or the ego. So it's letting go of this identity, this identification with what we've created in our mind and believe to be what we are. So Michael Singer's work is really about letting go of that. And that's really what I believe most of these masters are pointing to, is understanding what you actually are through this process of dissolving the ego. Now, dissolving the ego doesn't mean that we're getting rid of the ego. It just means that we're transcending the ego. We're going beyond the ego. We're going beyond the identification of being a person, of being a body, of being a mind, of being all of the thoughts that we think make up who we are, and we're moving into a deeper identification through knowing, through this state of being, and understanding what we are through that channel of being, through this process of letting go of everything that we're not, and better understanding what we are because of it. So to go back to my journey in the beginning, I think it might be helpful for some of you who are just starting along this process to realize that if you don't understand what some of these teachers are speaking about, that's perfectly fine. Continue on the path and continue to do the work of letting go. And I love what Michael Singer says about just start with the low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit can be something as simple as driving down the freeway and not getting mad at the person in front of you who's going 10 miles below the speed limit or 10 miles faster than the speed limit. Just begin to realize that you can handle what's going on in your life, that you get to be the one that decides how you want to respond to what's happening. The other point that I want to make about the beginning of this process of letting go is that there really is no beginning, because time is a made-up thing. So depending on what life or incarnation that you're on, you've already begun the process of letting go, probably for lifetimes. So don't get hung up on this is the lifetime that I'm going to fully let go and I'm going to fully arrive. Because when we approach letting go as a means to an end, then we're missing the point. We're trying to get something out of letting go. And that's the antithesis of what letting go is about. Letting go is about realizing that what you are is not what you think you are, by letting go of everything that isn't you, by letting go of all of the identifications, all of the attachments that you have that don't really serve you and that block you from your liberation. So approach this process as an enjoyable thing, as resistance training, as something that you're going to do for the rest of your life, or until you feel that it doesn't serve you anymore. But if you can look at it that way, if you can look at letting go as something that is just a tool that allows you to find more freedom, more peace, more joy, more love in your life, then you'll be able to continue down this path of letting go without getting frustrated with yourself and beating yourself up and wondering why it's not working or it's not working faster than you'd like it to. So we can let go of needing letting go to be something that gets us to a certain place. We can just surrender to that too. Losing my identity. I think before somebody begins their awakening process, they typically hit rock bottom. And some people don't need to do that. Some people actually just continue on this upward trajectory. Maybe in past incarnations, they've gotten to a certain level where they don't need to go down before they go up again. But in my case, I definitely felt that I lost my identity, really, really lost my identity in my early 30s. And I think if I were to look back, even as a child, I was very aware of something greater than being a body. I think I always had this very strange feeling about life, about the world. It definitely felt dreamlike to me, but I also had experiences as a child that were mystical in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to go into the details now, but especially in my early 20s, I was very clairvoyant. I would see a lot of images, even in the New York subway. I would see, ropes hanging where they would hang people. And I would see entities in my room floating. I would also just know how to psychically read people on the subway, which was very strange, but also very natural. I would just look at people and know, oh, that guy is going to die soon if he doesn't stop smoking. And she just had a fight with her husband. And all these really strange things began to happen, I would say, in my early 20s. And there was just this knowing about that stuff. It wasn't really something that I was trying to do, but it was this strange sort of thing that I knew how to do where I could just look at people and tune into them and know things about them that were so obvious to me that I didn't even think it was a skill or a talent or some sort of ability until later, until I would start giving people this information and they wouldn't understand how I would know that about them. But my point is, when I was doing that, when I would tune into people, what was interesting is that I would completely lose my sense of a self. I didn't have any sense of being me. And what I would do is completely drop any identity as Margot, as the Margot that I was identifying with, as a body, as a mind, as my story, as my past. And I would just tune into people and I would be able to read them. But like I said, the only way that I could actually read people was by completely dropping this sense of being me. So that was really, I suppose, my first real run-in with my true self. And I think that that's very interesting because Yogananda talks about this a lot. He says that when you're intuitive, that's very much the soul's nature. As we become very spiritual, what we tap into is our intuition, and our intuition is what gives us that knowing on a much higher level than the conceptual level, because we're going beyond thinking. Intuition is strange in that way because all of a sudden it's like you download all this information. You have no idea how you know these things, but you just sort of know them. Now, as things went on, I was deeply seeking some sort of spiritual path. So I was always reading, I was always looking for some answers about life, about the afterlife, about spirit, about some of these things that I was seeing. So in my early 30s was when I really felt like I lost my identity. I had been dating someone for about 5 or 6 years, and I really cared about this person. He ended up cheating on me, leaving me, and I was absolutely devastated. I didn't have a job at the time, so I had no sense of an identity coming from a career. And everything in my life, in terms of where I thought I should be, had been completely destroyed. And so I sort of looked at myself and where I was, and I wondered who I was, because I felt in a strange way that I was nobody. I felt that I had nothing left. There was nothing that I could hold on to that I could identify with. There was nothing that was propping me up or making me feel good about who I was. And so it really shattered any sense of having an identity in general. And I remember looking at my sweet brother and saying to him, I just don't know who I am anymore. I really don't. I just feel like I'm nobody. And yes, there was very much this feeling of feeling bad about myself, feeling like I had just been dumped and lost the love of my life. And I didn't have the second child that I was so wanting from that person. And I wasn't married and I didn't have a career. And I felt like I was just nowhere in my life. My finances were in the toilet. And so I really took a hard look at what I thought I was. And at that point, I really felt like I didn't know. I had even gotten to the point where I was suicidal. I was so depressed because I had no sense of an identity. And it was really scary. It almost felt like free falling. And there was no end. It was just free falling into this bottomless pit of nothingness. And I didn't like the feeling at all. And I just felt like there was no point to living. And I'm so glad that I didn't go down that path because, my God, I would have missed out on all of the things that I understand now, all of the beauty that I understand now. And it's so unfortunate that sometimes we have to get to that point where we hit rock bottom before we can begin to awaken. Now, if you're in that state, I just want to say that there is hope. And I promise you that you can get out of that state. I promise you that there is so much love for you here, that there is so much joy for you if you would just continue down this path, if you would just keep going and not give up on yourself. And most importantly, know that what is causing your pain is your identification with what you're not. And that is the only reason. And what liberates us, what really, really frees us from the bondage of self, is realizing that we're something far greater than what we're told we are. We're not a body, we're not a mind, and we're absolutely not our past. We're not our past conditioning. It's our conditioning that keeps us in this zombie-like state where we're in this loop and we're cycling through these patterns of behavior over and over and over again. And it feels like we're on a hamster wheel and we just can't get off. But when you have that glimmer of awareness, that's you. The awareness is what you are. And when we can take that awareness, which is what we are, and we can begin to release the identification that the awareness has to all of these things that are happening to us in life, then we begin to free ourselves. Then we begin to let go. I really do believe that being exposed to all of these different teachers, whether it be Michael Singer, Eckhart Tolle, Mooji, there's so many beautiful people, David Hawkins, reading all of those things in my early 20s really did have an impact on me. Everything that we ingest, or hear, it doesn't fall on deaf ears. Something that I could have heard 10 years prior can have an effect on me today. So don't ever lose hope just because you feel like you're not understanding something initially and think that it's not going to register at a later time, because it will. Putting it to the test. In retrospect, after I had been exposed to some of these teachers that I had been reading, and then having that experience of hitting rock bottom and not knowing who I was anymore, it was time to put letting go to the test. And that really started to happen in my early 30s. And the first deep surrendering experience that I had was with my special needs daughter. So she was born when I was 35 years old, and I was really devastated. I mean, that's an understatement. I thought I was going to have a healthy, beautiful little girl. She's absolutely beautiful, but she does have a never seen before genetic condition, and she's nonverbal. She's still in diapers. I'm most likely going to be taking care of her for the rest of my life. And she's absolutely angelic, and I couldn't love her more. But at the time, I was devastated by this news. And so the only way that I found any freedom out of that deeply depressed, sad state was when I practiced letting go. And so the more that I put this to the test, the more I realized how this works. Now with her, it was so clear, every time that I would start to feel bad, it was typically because I would feel either sorry for her because I'd look at another typically developing child, I'd see them running down the street or calling out their mother's name or just talking and being able to eat and do all these things that other normally developing children do. And I would feel really bad. And I would start to feel like, why me? Why her? Why couldn't I have just had a healthy child? Why did this have to happen? What did I do wrong? A lot of self-blame. And then I realized that what would happen if I just let go of those thoughts? What would happen? And so I would play around with this. And the more that I would shed all of these thoughts and just let them go and just play around with that, it was really like this moment to moment play. I had to approach this in a moment to moment way because I really was so scared of letting that go entirely, because the reality was that I was going to be living with this for the rest of my life. So I wasn't ready to completely let go of that. But I would let go of it for a moment. And when I did, it was so incredible because I would just sit there, and I would do this on the roof. I would sit on the roof of the building and I would just sit there and I would say to myself, okay, let's see how it feels if I let go of this. Let's see how it feels if I just imagine what it would feel like to be okay with having a special needs daughter. And I'd sit there and I'd fight it. I'd struggle. But then the minute I would go, oh, okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. It would just lift. And I would let go of that feeling and it would lift. And then a thought would rush in of, yeah, but she's never going to talk. I'm never going to be able to talk to my daughter. And then those feelings would come crushing back in, just crushing my chest. It was like this pressure in my chest like this. And I would feel them again. Instantaneously, they'd be back. And then I would say to myself, okay, let's do this again. Let's try it again. Another moment. And I would just allow myself to play and try on what it feels like to let that go. And so it was this very clear reflection of, okay, the minute I let this go, it lifts. That feeling just disappears inside of me. But the minute that I attach to the thoughts that are making me feel bad, it comes back again. And the lesson was so clear. I needed to fully surrender to now having this special needs daughter for the rest of my life. But I didn't get there in one fell swoop. I did it little by little. Little by little, I let go. Little by little, I'd sit on my roof and I'd just be with myself and I would try on the new feeling of what it would be like to let go of feeling bad about this. What would it feel like for just one moment to be okay with having a special needs daughter? And eventually, I got there. And eventually, it became a gift. A spoonful of God molecule. The next chapter in this process of letting go became really interesting when I took 5-MeO-DMT. And you can watch that video. It's called The God Molecule. I'll leave it here. And that was when I got this deep confirmation of what it is that I am. Now, I had been meditating for a long time before that and having a real sense of being awareness. And this experience with 5-MeO-DMT really clarified that for me. So that really shifted the trajectory of what it was that I knew I needed to seek and knew that I needed to deepen, because I had a deeper understanding of what I was. And that's when I started to understand that I needed to figure out how to let go of all of this junk that I was holding inside of me, which is what Michael Singer talks about, and realize that the more I let go of that, the more that I was left with the real me, the more that I was going to be left with the unconditioned me, the formless me, the awareness that I am, wavering along the path. I think that as we continue on this journey of letting go and this seeking of truth, I think that it's normal to waver. I think it's normal to jump from teacher to teacher, from video to video, from book to book, and to try to continue to seek our truth. And I think there comes a point when you sort of stop doing that, because you realize that you have to pick a path. You have to either pick a teacher, or you realize that maybe you're done with all of that in general. And maybe you realize that The information, the knowledge is something that you already can begin to access because you're in tune with that intuitive part of you. So you're sort of downloading this information and you're just tapped in. And that's a really beautiful state to get to. But I think that there does need to come a time, like Yogananda speaks about so much, where you really find a path and you stick to that path. And for me, that path has deeply been letting go. And letting go, as I understand it today in this now current moment, is always about letting go of this personal concept of self. Because I'm realizing that there is no self, there is no me. And letting go is this beautiful bridge to getting to this understanding, this realization of what you are, because the more that we let go, as Michael Singer says, the more that you learn how to handle life, the more you realize that you can be in the flow of life. You can just experience life without resisting life, without fighting against life. And you realize that you are life. You know, Eckhart Tolle says that all the time, and I love that so much because it allows us to remember that we can let go of thinking that we have a life, that we have this personal self, that we have these personal needs, that we have these goals, and we have to do something in order to have a life that was meaningful. But our life has meaning when we realize what we are, when we realize that we are life, when we realize that we're part of all that is, that we are experiencing everything in this world of form because we are the animating force behind everything that's giving life to what is. And these things are so difficult to speak about because words, language is dual in nature. So even when I say things like your true self, it's like there's a separate you and then there's your true self. And that's not really the case. There's you, the awareness, period. And that is experiencing itself through a physical body. That's experiencing all the things that are happening around you. And there's always that awareness, and that never goes away. And that's what you are. And that awareness is what I mean when I talk about you. That's the real you. So if we can learn how to just let go of everything that we think makes up who we are, everything that has to do with our past, everything that has to do with an idea of what we think we are, an idea of what we think we want to be, or an idea of what the future holds. If we can let go of those things, then we can begin to be fully present. And as Michael Singer says, that's when you sit in the seat of true self. That's when you get out of that seat of unconsciousness and you sit in that king throne of true self and you witness life through the single eye of spirit. You see the non-duality in everything. You see that this world of form, this Maya, this Leela, this play is sort of a dream. It's an illusion. And I don't really know what it is, to be honest. I mean, it's becoming very dreamlike. But I do have a real sense of not being me, of not being a self, of just being life that is experiencing all that is. And it's a beautifully freeing place to get to. It is so wonderfully liberating because I realize that what traps us, what makes us suffer, what makes us feel bad or limited in any way is anything that boxes us in. And ideas box us in. Concepts of what we think we are box us in. And when we realize that we're really nothing, like we're not a thing, we're just this incredible ability to experience. It's sort of like it's such a hard thing to explain. Awareness is just this observer, this watcher, this thing that's always there, that has no judgment, that has no preference, that is just in this beautifully equanimous state. There are no highs, there are no lows. It's just this beautiful, beautiful existence. It's existence. And I'm sure that my understanding of this is going to shift and change and deepen, or maybe it won't. I'm really not sure. But today, my experience of letting go is all about continuously letting go of anything that boxes us in. And there's such liberation there for us. There's such freedom. When we get into a state of being, it's very, very freeing. It's very liberating to not feel that there's anything that we have to attach to not feel that there's anything that we have to become, to feel that you can just exist and that that's enough and that that's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I love you all so much. Until next time, remember to let go. Let go of trying to be anything other than the truth of what you are.